All right. And I'm looking here. All right. What's up, Mike? What's going on?
What's up, Monty?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So we're a week removed from Father's Day. So happy belated Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Yeah. Okay. So Father's Day. Yeah. Father's Day is a very interesting holiday because it doesn't seem like it is a very big or celebrated holiday. It's almost kind of a, oh, well, there's a Mother's Day. So might as well have a Father's Day too, right?
Well,
So,
that's the interesting thing, right? Because I feel like we're in the midst. So yeah, so we're in the midst of Pride Month in the United States,
yes.
and Pride Month,
It just drowns it out. Totally
yeah. And
drowns
I
it out.
feel like I've been inundated
Yes.
with a lot of just like, oh, that was the interesting. Oh yeah, that reminds me. So it struck me. One of the things that it struck me was we were driving down the main square in Seoul. We're doing like a little road trip, and I saw a giant
Yep.
rainbow flag, and I was like, "Oh, that's right." So the embassy is in this big plaza, like
Oh,
in
you
the
mean
main
the
plaza in
American
Seoul.
embassy, right?
So the American embassy had this giant
Yep.
was flying a giant pride flag, and I was like, "Oh yeah, this month is Pride Month," and because I was wondering, because the thing is, like, Pride Month's not a thing in Korea, but that also,
Embassy, yeah.
and so, like, that reminded me. I was like, oh yeah, that building is the embassy, because I was just like, wait, what is that? What is that?
Mm-hmm.
What is that giant flag doing? I was like, oh
Oh
yeah,
gosh,
that's the
you
embassy.
you reminded me of that. I got to go to the embassy on Tuesday. I'm gonna take note of that. Actually, I'm
You
sure
have
they
the
have something. They have something
oh,
set up there. I'm sure, right?
right, right,
I got
right.
to send my license back. So
And
yeah. Go ahead.
and so part of me was just like, oh, that's really cool. That's interesting. That sort of symbol there. But yeah, like, as far as in my day to day life, that was an interesting encounter. But then as far as like media goes, like, I'm scrolling through YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and like, it's just,
Everywhere,
everything is pride,
everywhere.
everything's pride, 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 pride. And I'm just like, okay, well, that's cool. But then that's an interesting contrast to
Our daily lives.
where's the father love?
Oh, good lord, man.
Where's the
Well,
love for Father's Day?
this whole
Where's the
I
love for fathers in general?
well, you know what's funny is that as a I'll say this even as a black person, like like when you talk about racism is there and it's omnipresent, but it's not the oppressive racism that my grandfather dealt with.
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
my grandfather told stories of having to. I got to make sure. My grandfather told stories, or I've heard stories from my father about dealing with grand, like Ku Klux Klan grand wizards, and keeping them from doing something dastardly to his sons. Right. So that's like my grandfather. But my generation is just when the police pull you over, be respectful and use yes sir, yes ma'am, and just it's subtle racism. So like there's racism there, but racism is not the excuse for why you can or cannot succeed, right? So it's different, right? So like if there is a as black people, certainly it's our responsibility to confront racism, but to use racism as an excuse that is just not a viable excuse anymore because it just isn't. Like it is better conditions now than it has ever been for a minority or whatever to start a business, make a lot of money, and progress. Is it
Yeah.
perfect? Is it equal? Of course, it's not.
No. It's
But
unfair, but like,
but it's
it's
less
not nearly
unfair.
as bad as
That's
it was
right.
in the
That's
past.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point, right?
Right.
And so like growing up and seeing that part of it, you kind of hear like this, you hear the I guess the womanism part of it and women saying that men are oppressing them and I'm not saying that I can't see it, but like
But that makes
just
me so,
yeah, it's I mean
as
if you
as a
I
side
would say it's
concept.
easier being a woman than it is being black, and it's easier to be black now than it ever has been in America.
Well, so here's the thing, though. Like, this brings up what you just mentioned. Also brings up this concept that I grapple with a lot, which is everyone's individual struggle is the to them is the biggest struggle in the world, right? So I've encountered this time and time again. And this is, like I said, it's the hardest thing for me to grapple. But like, whenever I talk to someone, this is advice that someone told me, like when you're talking with teenagers specifically, is that if a teenager tells you about this sort of trivial problem in their world,
Yeah, that's the biggest problem. Yeah.
to them it's the biggest problem in the world, right?
Yeah.
And regardless of whether you tell them like, oh, you failed a test, well, and that consequence to you, you know in a relative sense is small, to them emotionally it's
Yeah.
as powerful,
Yeah.
right? And when you deal with like people on a day-to-day basis, it's the same thing, where maybe someone basically someone who's gone through, like, I don't know, this is, it's not a perfect analogy, but like when people make their metaphors and say like, hey, that's like going to war,
Oh,
something like that.
dude.
But then like you realize like, okay, that compared to actual war is
Well,
nothing.
what, dude?
But
The black community has heard this time and time again with a the womanist, the feminist feminism struggle, and b like gay rights. Like, dude, neither of you were enslaved, stripped of your name and your culture, and had zero rights for 300-400 years. So just don't do that. Stop.
right.
Like, don't do that. Like like you if just don't do that. That's the best way to say
Right.
it. Like, just
So, but I mean, that's the other thing too, is like on the other end of it, and I think this is what you're getting at, is this idea that you don't want to get into a who suffered the most
yeah.
contest either, because that's ultimately fruitless. Like, who cares? Like, but
Well, but that's
there's this weird balance between keeping things in context, but also understanding that individuals, again, individual struggles emotionally sort of resonate at the same frequency, or they feel
well,
they're just as just as valuable.
yeah.
And that's the, like I said, that's the hard thing for me to grapple in my head, to try to keep those two thoughts at the same time, because I feel like oftentimes they it's hard to negotiate that, but
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about like current day American culture and
sure.
how it kind of operates, and I think one of the really key structures to current day American culture is this identification with I'm a victim. And this is something that I've had to deal with because I've looked at like race relations, and I always feel like, oh, just being a black person is unfair, whatever. But I look at the opportunities that I have as a 44-year-old black person in 2021. I can't fucking complain, man. Like, Jesus, man, I'm living in Japan, and people are leaving my ass alone. Like, I just can't complain. Compared to my grandfather, what am I complaining about? Like, it's not perfect, no. But am I a victim? No, I'm not a victim. But that is a very current day theme in American culture, and I feel like this microaggression and all this stuff, and it's just, I don't know, it seems like it's creating weak people. Like,
Well, I think so. Another thing that I wanted to actually talk to you about, and something that is, oh gosh, I can't, oh, I forgot the name of it now, but it's kind of like, I feel like one of the big issues, that this idea of victimization that has that
yeah.
that maybe we both feel has sort of risen in American culture, I feel like is a symptom of the, oh gosh, of um the sort of levels of self actualization. I can't remember. There's like a pyramid of,
Oh, okay.
but I can't
Yeah.
remember what it's called offhand. But like, but basically, I my the thought that I had recently was this. I was basically that I feel like most of America, at least most of the America that is visible in terms of media, exists in the like top area of the pyramid, which is kind of like social issues, like all these things. So,
Mhm.
whereas when you look at the bottom of the pyramid, I feel like the majority of people should be concerned with survival. Like basically, like the bottom part of the pyramid is
Mhm.
can you survive? Like, do you have your
Oh, well, yeah,
basic
of
needs?
course. Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
then after that, it's like, can you take care of like the people around you? And like, I don't know
Yeah.
the exact levels, like
I
all
know,
the
I
different,
know, I know that I
but
know the pyramid of which you speak. Yes.
but but that's the thing. Like, I feel like what has happened in the United States is that people have sort of jumped to that top level where you're sort of philosophizing and you're
Yeah.
dealing with like these sort of idealistic, notions and politics, and they're getting sort of sucked into these higher levels of self-actualization when they haven't met any of these lower they haven't
Oh
met any of the
well,
lower needs
you
yet.
know, it's
you know
interesting that you bring that up, right? Like I like to. One of the reasons I like to follow the New York Times on Facebook is because like it kind of attracts the more liberal followers on social media, right? And so like I remember reading one of the comments underneath uh one of the postings about the rent moratorium, right?
Mhm.
And like and you almost get some of these people that saying like charging rent is evil and they shouldn't be able to do it, and they should do this in perpetuity, and like you hear that and you think, well, okay, I, I can understand why you might feel that way, but what would be the impetus for society to build better houses or nicer houses or bigger houses? There would be no people would just build huts. They would build minimum huts and charge like the government sanctioned price for the hut, and you would pay the price, and you'd be like, well, why can't I have a hut as nice as the other people? And it's just this kind of like, I wish that society was this way because it would make me feel better about myself, as opposed to, okay, well, for society to be better, you might need to petition for like government socialized childcare and better
Right.
roads and stuff like that, and the boring stuff, that boring political stuff, as opposed to caring about pro-choice and and like women's rights and gay rights. Like, look, you need to worry about if the road that you're driving on is passable so that the trucks are coming back and forth to your supermarket can get there quickly so you can lower the prices.
No, exactly, exactly. Like
Like
it's
but most people don't have they don't have the I mean they're taught to care about like hot button issues that, I mean, really, abortion, like in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter if people can get abortions or not? Like, are you taking care of anyone else's children? Like, it's just a something that makes you feel good about yourself or make you feel self-righteous, as opposed to boring stuff like how much money are you guys going to invest in infrastructure because China, Japan, Asia is whooping our ass. Like they have high-speed rail in America, it still has potholes and infrastructure on the interstate that was built in the 1960s. So, but that's boring. Like, no one's going to run an infrastructure because it's too hard. So,
I mean, it's well the I'm trying to find this quote. Sorry, like this quote that I saw. So there's this article. I can't. I'll have to paraphrase because I can't find it. But there's an article about the television host, Conan O'Brien.
mhm.
So his show ended,
Yeah,
uh,
that's right. That's right.
I think this past week,
Mhm.
and I was reading an article about him, and there was a quote, and I'm going to butcher it now. I wish I could find it. I should have saved it because I didn't actually expect to talk about this with you, but it's
Yeah.
interesting how it dovetailed together. But basically, the gist of it was a remarkable thing about Americans is that they will. It's interesting how so many like poor people will run to the aid of millionaires or
Mhm.
something to that effect. It's like it's interesting how this phenomenon in America of people that are poor to low, like how
Well,
like people who
struggling,
don't have
no,
a lot of money,
struggling. Yes.
yeah, people that don't have a lot of money are just throwing money at millionaires. They'll just throw money at millionaires because they like them, because I mean, it's an interesting, like, on its surface there's something endearing to it, but in reality, when you step away from it, you're just like, this is messed up.
Well,
Like, what a screwed up
but
system.
this is one of, and this is one of the problems with, and you can go, there'll never be reparations in America. Our reparations is Juneteenth, which is a, oh God,
Not large scale. Not
not
large scale.
okay.
Right.
I'm going to curse for a second. Juneteenth is a fucking joke. It's a fucking joke on black people, and it fucking irritates me to no end. But that
You
aside,
mean like the Biden administration acknowledgement of Juneteenth as a national
uh,
holiday?
well, the
Or
fact that he ran on police reform and he's giving us fucking Juneteenth, and we don't give a fuck about that. I don't want to. I don't give a fuck about Juneteenth. I want to be able to get stopped by a cop, and if he fucking guns me down, he's going to jail. That's what he did all that running on,
sure.
and so whatever. Like, okay, fine, Juneteenth, blah blah blah. It's a band aid, and America's always good at the band aids. And part of the reason why you can't have great social change in America is because we have never had a reckoning in America that, hey, listen, we got to do right by the black people that suffered. We got to do right by the Native Americans who suffered. We got to do right by the Chinese Americans who came here and suffered. And in a certain way, they done right by the Japanese Americans who suffered. But there are people that were wronged in American history. We need to acknowledge it, write it in the textbooks, atone for it, and come together and say we're all Americans. And we have never, ever done that. So every time you get to a social issue like socialized healthcare, like socialized child or universal child care, it's I don't want to pay for them because they don't deserve it. Like I only want to take care of people like myself who's trying hard. And certainly you have people who are in their pockets who don't even know anyone that's different from them. So their only like common ground they have in terms of what they think are the people who are quote unquote sucking up all their resources is people of other races who aren't trying as hard as they are. And so there's no us. So every time you get to this, hey, let's do something for the greater good of all preschool children, for the greater good of all underprivileged people. It's like, well, I want to do something for underprivileged people like myself, but not for all underprivileged people because they don't deserve it. So, so America goes in this loop. It goes in this loop again, like Ronald Reagan did it. This whole idea that there's this welfare queen who's getting rich off the government, and that's a myth that people still believe to this day, and it gets you elected, and so that's how it gets perpetuated.
I mean, I think that this also, I think what you're talking about also dovetails nicely with this idea of fatherhood and this erasure of fatherhood, because I feel that this is a thought that I had this morning as we're doing a little holiday thing uh, this morning, and as I was pushing my son around on a bike, I thought to myself that basically I'm sort of the lowest rung on the ladder in the family because basic I have to keep my kids my kids sort of uh, goals and things ahead of me, and I keep my wife's sort of needs ahead of mine as well. And if anything, I sort of have to sort of erase myself. Like I can't really think of anything that I want to do. I kind of have to think about it in terms of like,
Well,
okay,
Mike, that is, and oh man, I'm reading. I'm sure you're familiar with Robert Greene, right?
great now.
So he wrote a really long book called the Laws of Human Nature, and it's just really fascinating because he goes across the whole gambit.
Oh, is
But
that the book that you posted a
yeah,
link
yeah, yeah,
on
on Facebook,
Facebook?
yeah.
Okay, okay,
And
I saw that. I'm
so
not familiar with him.
so like one of the things he talks about in the book is that like we human beings, we're not new to this. Like us rewriting the rules on human sexuality and how society should work, that's new. Like how women should procreate and how much freedom they should have with their sexual liberties, and that's new stuff because you can be guaranteed that other societies have dealt with the idea of sexual liberation for 19-year-old girls, and societies probably came to certain points like, hey, listen, like we can't do that. It's not going to work. Like 19-year-old girls cannot be the administrators or the governors of their social sexual activity. It's just dead end. So we've been here before as humans, and other societies have written rules like, hey, listen, we got to introduce some shame, we got to introduce some laws or something, some kind of societal construct, because if you make it wide open for women to do whatever they want when they're at their sexual peak, everyone in society will go looking to violate those women. And then when those women are 35, 40, nobody will want them. But society will still have to carry those women. And look, you could say it's social, whatever, whatever, but even 2 generations ago, like it was unacceptable for a lot of the things that we're dealing with. And I brought up that to say this. Part of the construct of human society has been that men have been the buffers for the government having to do a bunch of stuff, right? Like you like so like man gets married to a woman, they have a family, and one person stays home, the other man work, or the person works, and then you have let's say you have 7, 8, 9, 10 kids. The burden of raising those children falls on those two people, not on the society. So like the burden of society picks up at 6, 7 when those kids start walking to school. But now the burden of society has kind of shifted from when they're old enough to go to school to, well, I'm a single parent and I have a child, I need help. And so if that is an anomaly, that's one thing. But if that becomes the societal norm, or even a greater norm for society, then you're looking at society assuming an additional role. And anytime that society or government has assumed that additional role, that costs resources. That costs something. And so you talk about how you're the lowest rung on the ladder. Part of the reason why Asian societies in particular are where they are is because it's not like women are having children at 2 months and the government's like, we're going to take care of your child at 2 months old, and we're going to raise them until they're old enough to go to elementary school. Like they'll help, but a lot of that is there are social helps, but a lot of that responsibility is falling on those two people that made that child. Sure. And so when society is moving further towards the direction of society is going to help you take care of your children, then it moves towards the direction of, then why do I need a man? Why do I need to have a man in the house, right? Because if you know that you can have a child by yourself, you could for whatever reason you don't choose to marry the man, or you didn't want to marry the man, or whatever, and you know that the government's going to help you take care of that child while you work from 2 months old, then what do you need a man for? And I think that's kind of like the direction America's moving. And we're gosh, I'm talking for a little while, but I think America moving in that direction in terms of like progression, it might be a great thing. But in terms of tradition and the need of men and society and how society is going to progress without having like concrete, like nuclear families, we don't know how that's going to progress. We don't know what that's going to do to society. And so you like part of the nuclear family has been the man making sacrifices in what he immediately wants. And of course, the woman making sacrifices in her career or what she wants to do with herself. And then when the child is old enough, okay, let's go. But like now we're moving towards a society where the sacrifice is not made by anyone except the government. The government's going to have to take care of that, which is fine. But what if you're a woman who says, I want to have the kid, but I don't want the man in my house? Government's going to give you, so if you don't have enough money, they're going to give you, social support. They're going to give you like the government's going to become kind of sort of your de facto husband, which is not a problem if it's on a small scale. But what happens if 20, 25, 30% which is something that's really happening in the Black community, where you have a large amount of women who are having children without having a family, without having a husband. So what is the impetus to have a man in that household besides the social benefits of that child being normalized with a man and a woman in the house? Financially, it's more binary. Yeah, go ahead.
But I think that's, I mean, I think that's what the question is. I think what you've stumbled upon is what my question is, which is, what is, I guess, number one, what's important about a father, and
Yes,
why have
that's right.
and why specifically have fathers kind of disappeared? The role of father, I feel like, has been diminished.
I wouldn't
It
say
has sort
that.
of been
I would
has been
say that
erased.
I would say that the popular emphasis on the role of the father has been de-emphasized, but I don't think that it's been erased. I think because and the reason I say that is because like the elite, like people that are rich and people that come from rich cultures, they're not raising their children in broken homes. They're not doing that. Like that, it is the mass people, the mass of people who are following popular culture that are trying to raise women and raise children in single parent homes. Like the the the,
Well,
the
here's the thing.
the
Like,
upper class and people who come from strong cultures, they're not doing that.
but see, I see, but I don't subscribe to. I don't know if this is what you're talking about necessarily, but for me, I don't subscribe to this idea that, to me, like rich fathers are not fathers most of the time. Most of the time, all like basically, I feel in a lot of situations, particularly for those
Yeah,
families with a lot of money,
yeah.
the fathers don't do anything except have
Provide.
money, except provide the financial uh, capability for the family. And I think for me, and this is just my opinion, it seems anecdotally when I hear stories of
Yeah.
people with money, specifically fathers that make a lot of money, or and I guess like in households that make a lot of money, that's the only contribution oftentimes, aside from token sort of participation, or sometimes
Well, but but
driving kids to and socializing ultimately.
But what
But like,
one of the things about that kind of lifestyle, and this is why it's so important to have a community around a child, is because like is like a child has to understand, like if you're, I mean, it could be the mother, it could be the father, it doesn't really matter which sex it is, but like if one of your parents is an exceptional, I don't know, person in society, there's going to be a sacrifice that's made in terms of how much time they can give to you, their kids. So, like, it's kind of the responsibility of the rest of the people in the family to say, you know who your father is, right? You know who your mother is, right? You know why they're not here all the time, right? So, like, even if their father or mother is giving them 10, 15, 20 minutes a day, right? Like, the reason why your father's not here or mother's not here is because they are this person, and they could look at even just the image of that person being so busy, but they're not there because they matter, they're somebody important, and that in itself has an effect on a child. But if you have someone coming home and no one is telling them, oh yeah, your father is a or your mother or whatever is a partner in a exclusive law firm, you just like, oh, my family's not, my mother's not here, my father's not here, it's not fair. Like the people around that child have to tell them the truth. Like if you want to be someone of substance, sacrifices have to be made one way or the other, right? So
well,
yeah.
so here's the thing. So I just like, so basically, that also kind of circles back to this idea of the Maslow's. I found out Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Oh, there it is. Yeah.
Within and but I remember thinking that there is another sort of pyramid where in my mind, I simplified it in terms of people. So I feel like you're talking about this idea of society. If someone is extraordinary and they're able to serve society, I feel like people that are in that role need to make sure that they can also cover all these different levels.
Yeah.
So if someone can take care of their individual themselves, that's sort of level one. They can take care of like their immediate family. That's like level two. And then like level three, they can take care of their community. And then like once
Yeah.
they're able to kind of take care of all this stuff, then they can take care of an estate or they can take care of, you know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a country or whatever. That's the thing. That's another part where I feel there is a there is a it's problematic when people jump up. You know, when you look at people in government, for example, that they have horrible marriages and they have terrible, you know, they can't take care of their own
Well,
household, you
well,
know, and I'm just
well,
like, hey man,
but
that
I want
that's
to put
what strikes me when you say like these extraordinary people that serve many people
well, but
serve, you know,
I
large
want
things. I'm just like, yeah,
well, I want to push back on the horrible marriage thing because, like, in the West, we don't really have a concrete definition for what a good marriage should be. Like, our our definition of marriage still comes from Hollywood. It still does. Like,
well here's the thing. So what I like, and again, this is also based purely. It's hard to judge any people because who do you really ever know? But you know, I have conversations with you know pretty successful people like CEOs or high level managers like in
yeah,
these different companies and things. And when I talk to them, I can tell which guys are have crappy which people have crappy
yeah,
families and which guys have good families,
yeah, yeah,
right? And generally the more like, and that's the thing, like for me, when I talk to this one guy, I think, okay, I ask him about his family, I ask him about his daughter, and he knows about what his daughter's
mhm,
into, and he talks candidly about his relationship with his wife, and I'm just like, okay, this guy's got a solid head on his shoulders, seems like he's got a
yeah,
pretty good grasp of what's going on with his family. It makes sense for me that he's also like this high level scientist guy
yeah,
in, you know, at this company, and he's making big decisions that
yeah,
are affecting the world, you know. And then I look at, you know, someone else, right? I have a conversation with that, and it's clear this guy doesn't really care about
yeah.
whatever. He doesn't even know his kids. Um, I see him interact with his kids. His kids clearly hate him. Super powerful dude, though. He's got a great position.
Yeah.
He's got it. But that to me is a situation where his role as a father, he has failed,
Oh,
right? Because
and look, the reason why he's failed is not his time. Like, it's not his time. It's his amount of caring. So
right,
so like let's say that his children are going to swimming lessons 8 times a month, right? Twice a week. If he said second Tuesday of every month, I'm taking you guys to swimming and I'm going to watch you guys do the swim lesson. And I want you guys to do your best because I'm going to be watching. You think that those kids aren't going to be swimming as hard as they can, even harder on that one day than the other 7? Of course they would.
sure, yeah.
But that's just daddy caring to do that a little bit. And I don't know if that has anything to do with anything other than character, right? Like, how
Well,
much do you
sure,
care
but
about your kids, right? So yeah,
yeah, but that's the other, that goes back to this idea of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
yeah,
because ultimately part and this concept of sacrifice, because in the end, I don't know where I picked this up, but when ultimately like when I got married, I told myself my life as an individual has
yeah.
ended.
Of
And
course, that's of
that was part
course,
of why I
absolutely,
knew I was ready to get remarried, because I'm just like, you know what, I've pretty much done most of the stuff I need to do as an individual, so let's, you know, I'm fine going into a partnership and
yeah,
just sort of figuring out what are our things. And then like again, when we had a kid, it was the same process. And that's where I feel like, in terms of like, when I say that I felt like the third part of the ladder, the third rung of the ladder, that was sort of the thing where I fell below the partnership. My individual needs fell below like the partnership's needs, and then fell even further once we had a kid. So the kids' needs, or ultimately their future, sort of is sort of like the
Well,
top one.
so what you're saying basically is that a house has to have a foundation, right?
Ultimately,
And
right?
if
Yeah.
and if the foundation
I am the foundation.
no,
I'm
okay,
the
okay.
buried under the house.
Well, well, that
so that the rest of the house can be built.
well, more. I would say a better way of saying is that your ability to forsake your selfish individual needs, added with your wife's ability to cooperate with the fact that you both are going to be sacrificing so that the three of you guys can work. That is the foundation. Like, not you sacrificing, but you sacrificing things that you might want, and your wife sacrificing things that she might want, so that that everyone can support your family operating properly, right?
Right.
So
And so, to me, that is, I mean, pun not intended, the foundation of what fatherhood is, I feel.
yeah,
And I
I
feel
agree with
like,
that.
and I feel people don't talk about this enough.
Well, I think
Is
fatherhood is essentially sacrifice. That is
Right.
essentially what it is. Like, I want this. Like, I mean, it could go as simple as, like, you're married and you're a guy who can still get the attention of other women, and you deny yourself that because you have a family, and you want to portray a certain image to your family, your kids, and you say, you know what, not now, or I'm just not going to do that. I'll deny myself this immediate need or desire for whatever other women's attention, because I'm raising a family.
I
Yeah,
mean, that's the, I mean, to me, that is the more that I think about it, and this is why, it struck me this morning, is like any other individual need, whether it be, whatever, like whether is it a tryst, if it's a tryst, or if it's your career,
yeah,
or if it's, some other larger goal, or like the novel you always wanted to write, or who
yeah,
knows, or hobbies that you want to pick up. Like, ultimately, the the I feel, just from my own experience, the father's role is that foundational thing. Like, the father is the architect of the future of the family, or that
yeah.
house that you're building, that metaphorical house that you're building. That
Well,
the father is sort of the architect.
I would define it this way. I think that the role of the father is to allow his children to be children as long as possible. Like, they don't have to worry about adult stuff until they become as close as possible to adults. So when a kid is in elementary or junior high school and they're worried about money, or what we're eating for dinner or stuff like that, they're losing a part of their childhood, right? So, like, if a child can go until like 13, 14, 15, and just worry about school and their social circle, and what they want to be when they grow up, and not have to worry about, oh, mom and dad are going through this, or dad can't afford this, or just whatever that is, just worrying about things that don't have to do with school and their social circle.
But I think, I mean, I don't know. I think maximizing. I see what you're saying, but to me, I feel that it's not. It's. I feel like the goal isn't, at least for me, is not necessarily about the childhood aspect. I think that's a part of it, but to me, the goal is still to create a well-adjusted adult. Like,
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah,
if you have a brief child, because, like, to me, like, this idea, like, you know, uh, yeah, like, ultimately, like, you can have like a really cool kid and have like an amazing childhood, and then they're a loser. Like, they're just still like a
well,
loser
but
in society.
but the
You
reason
know,
the reason I'll push back against that is because, like childhood happens in stages. So it's not like a child at 5 is child at 2, child at 5, child at 9, child at 12. They're not the same person.
Sure.
I'll give you an example in what I'm going through, and you'll probably end up going through it sooner or later. Is so like my daughter is starting to hang out with girls at school, right? So one of the things she does with me is she says, "Oh, all of my friends are getting together at the park on Tuesday. Can I go to the park and go eat snacks with them?" Right?
Mm.
And so like imagine if she was someone who I said, "Well, no, I need you to cut vegetables and prep dinner and you got to wash clothes after you finish doing your homework." Imagine if she was in that situation where she's worrying about adult stuff instead of just being a regular old 9, 10 year old, right? That would have an effect on her going forward. And there are a lot of kids that go through stuff like that. Like I'm not saying that she shouldn't do any chores,
Yeah.
but making some of my responsibilities her responsibilities, that's a problem. I think that's a problem, and I think that's why
Yeah.
you have a
Yeah.
large number of people who are adult victims, is because they didn't have a chance to be a child and totally mature into adulthood. Like they feel like part of that was taken from them. So
The thing is, though, like, I hear what you're saying. The thing is, for me, though, is this reminds me of the another observation that I've made in life, which is when you go into an office. I don't know if we've talked about this theory or not, but a lot of times, if you go to an office, if you have an incompetent boss, you usually have an amazing support system staff. Like the greatest staffs are usually supporting the most incompetent boss. And then if you have an amazing boss, weirdly, a lot of times you have kind of crappy staff support, you know. But and it's usually, and I don't know why it turns out that way. I mean, I understand sort of the logistics behind it, but I don't know. It's weird. I always wonder, like, how does the crappy boss stay in his role, his or her role, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it's this weird or this weird sort of dichotomy, I guess. And for me, I feel that same instance kind of, there is a teachable, or there's a way of teaching or learning, I should say specifically, that rises out of need, right? Basically, and I feel that as tragic as it is for when like an adult's responsibilities fall on the shoulders of the children, it's also a tremendous, like, because again, I like this aspect. I don't want to project this, or I don't want everyone to have to go through this, but I think there's merit to maturing early. You know, I think having those responsibilities, or that's such a powerful learning moment where you think like, wow, like dad can't afford to buy XYZ, or we can't go to Disney World because I can't go to Disney World because all these other kids,
Yeah.
because dad has to do XYZ, or if I need to do, again, I don't know, but that I feel that can be a powerful lesson and a powerful tool to, because I feel at the same time, this is just my opinion, but you look at some of these extraordinary stories of people that come out of those situations because
Yeah.
of need or because of wanting, and then the opposite is also true, where when you are in a situation of abundance or
Yeah.
overabundance, your development can easily be stunted because because ultimately I feel like the underlying aspect of this is most people are terrible teachers. So circumstance is
Well,
probably the most
oh,
powerful teacher. And so that's idea of necessity is a powerful teacher and can basically be better than almost any individual parent at making your child mature and making your child sort of uh, more selfless and more,
well,
and
yeah,
look
yeah.
at
You
things
said
more in
selfless,
context.
so I was going to say empathy, right? Like
Yeah.
teaching your child empathy you see mom and dad are super busy, and
Yeah.
the even a child that's 5, 6 years old, they stand up and say, "Mom, Papa, how can I help?" Like
Yeah.
if they know that lesson at 5, they're going to know that lesson at 9, and they're going to know at 12 and 15. And that's the I think if there's any lesson that a child needs to get before they're 10 is, how can I help? I would like to help. How can I help? And if they can translate that into, it's not all about me, then they're going to turn into a well-adjusted adult, right?
Well, I mean, that reminds me, actually, it reminds me of a story that my wife told me uh, about something that happened, that's happened recently over the past couple weeks. Is Aaron? Aaron is Korean H4, American H3, and uh, and he started talking about, he started empathizing with my wife,
Yeah.
like weirdly, like basically there were two instances that she told me about where he saw that my wife
Yeah. Swamp busy.
was sad
Oh,
about
okay, okay.
something, was stressed out, and he brought her some gifts, some things.
Yes.
And so one instance was he brought her something. The second instance was him asking my wife, like, Mom,
You
what
mean
can I
you mean
what can I
asking
do?
asking his mother.
Yeah, like what yeah, asking his mom, right? But
Yeah.
him saying, like, what, Mom, what can I do?
Yeah.
What can I do for, how can I make you feel better?
Yeah.
Right? And that's the thing. It was out of necessity,
And
because she was stressed out, because she was in a situation where she was stressed out and I was not around.
what?
He was the one who had to observe,
Yeah.
and then to take those steps. Whereas us telling him, like, hey, you need to be, you need to do that, or you need to be friendlier to people, or whatever construct that
Yeah.
that we sort of set up to have him learn that, it's more effective, and
Well, what? So,
when it's real.
but we were talking about like why, like the father and the mom dynamic was so important, and I guess we'll get to like what's the current case in America as is, but one of the reasons why that's important, I think, in terms of like just having the mom and the dad dynamic along with the child dynamic, and allowing the child to kind of figure out empathy on their own, is because let's just say that one of the parents is absent, they're not there, and then you have a child who starts to feel like it's their job to fill one of those needs. Then they start developing a psychological issue of, like, they want to be a people pleaser, or they want to belong, or they become, what's the word, codependent, so stuff like that, right? It's like if you have a kind of secure triangle, if you will, or a secure foundation, if you will, the child will come to understand empathy on their own. Like, mom is racing around trying to fix lunch while he's sitting down playing with his blocks and watching TV. And the thought pops into his head, if dad was here, he'd help mama, but I'm sitting here watching TV. So maybe I should jump up and help mama a little bit. Like, that's not something that he's not doing it out of guilt. He's doing it out of just natural realization as a human being. And I just to point back to America a little bit, is I think that the American culture is kind of, I mean, that's a part of current day American culture that's kind of missing, really. Like, if I'm sitting down watching TV, why should I have to help? That's not my job,
Well, I think you
right?
also, I think that's an interesting point, in that I don't know if this is what you were inferring, but I think another interesting aspect to what you're talking about is there is a modeling. There are two elements, I guess. The first thing is there's that modeling aspect where the kid sees the father
Yeah,
help out in those situations at home, and that activates that point of comparison.
yeah,
Because alternatively, without that, again, there's the second aspect is, whatever you grow up with
Yeah.
is home. So if you're just playing with your blocks and mom's busting your butt making dinner, that's just reality. You don't
Well,
think to empathize. You don't think to help because you're just doing your thing.
and
And
go
as
ahead.
a kid, whatever you have is your reality, and you never pick up that empathy on your own. But that's why I feel that that modeling aspect is key, where you have someone that is doing that to show, hey, to contrast the moments where, oh, dad's not here, mom's having to do double duty,
Yeah.
trying to take care of me and fix lunch and is doing the laundry and doing all this stuff, and I'm just here farting around. Okay, maybe I can do something.
Well,
You know.
and this is one of those. This is why the gray areas are so important. Like when you, I don't know. I don't know enough about feminism, but let's just assume that part of the push for feminism was that men coming home after work and feeling like they're the king, and women at home saying, I don't feel appreciated, whatever. Let's say that guy comes home from high powered job, sits down and eats dinner, and he could just stand up and say, hey guys, we're gonna all take the plates into the kitchen to help mama, right? As opposed to just sitting in the chair saying, I worked all day, you carry the plates. It's not my job. Like that small gesture doesn't cost that much, right?
But even just what you mentioned, there is a flaw in in that in that system. Basically, if you are in the mode, if you are in family mode, then you're
Yes.
not thinking like, hey, I'm the king, I get to sit
Yeah,
out.
this is not my job. That's right.
Right. It's not my job. You know what? You're when you come. So to me, the most powerful thing that honestly I still struggle with, I've never really learned, is looking at looking at issues as just
Us,
independent tasks.
yeah.
Right. Not like this is your job, my
Yeah,
job,
yeah, yeah.
kid's job. It's this task just needs to be done. Okay, well if I'm in the kitchen, there's dirty dishes. All right, bah, 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 bah. It just needs to be done.
Yeah.
Right.
and
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 then
and and it doesn't suggest anything more feminine or masculine or any of that.
right.
It's just about utility. Like
We're yeah.
yeah, like
We're a unit.
mom is out shopping, and you happen to have a day off, or you're at the house and the sink is full of dishes. Like burn some calories, wash the dishes, then go back and sit down and watch TV. Like
Right. And so for me, I feel like the dangerous way of thinking is like we just talked about. And this is something that happens to me all the time where I'm just like, all right, well, I'm home. Oh man, I worked all day. I worked super hard all day. I'm home. I'm gonna rest. I'm gonna relax. It's like, oh, there are dishes over there. That's not my that's
well,
not my thing.
but I
you
think
know,
that the way to play that, and I because like there's always the happy medium, right? The way to play that is like I've had a really tough day. Can I just give me 30 minutes? Like just I got
sure.
give me 30 minutes, guys. And like you probably do that, and you probably have your son walking up giving you a little apple juice. It's like, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thanks, little guy. I appreciate that. And then he's like, Daddy works so hard. And you'd be like, oh, you're good. You know what? Let's go clean the kitchen up. And then I'll come back and sit back down. Stuff like that, right? But like when we get to this point of like it's not my job or it's not my fault, and I think that's a very Western, very American way of thinking, right? It's not my job, it's not my fault. Like you said you're going to do this, you didn't do it. And that's where cooperation, I mean, if there's a bedrock to how what makes a marriage work, it's cooperation, man. Like let a let a 6-month-old destroy a diaper. And I know you've cleaned, I know you've changed diapers.
Sure, yeah.
Like a 6-year-old will just drop a atomic bomb in a diaper. And you just like you're like, nope, not me. Like if you do that, like your wife is gonna resent you. She's gonna resent that. Like, no, you're the wife. You got to clean up this atomic bomb in this
Yeah.
diaper.
Well, I
And
mean, the other interesting thing, the other interesting sort of dynamic for me is specifically is that like my wife actually has a weird thing where like her fingertips kind of can get shredded really easily, like especially like with water. And so bath time is dad time, right? Because if she has her hands in the water too much, like it screws her up. So I'm just like, all right, bath time is dad time. And it's tough, man. It's tough because, wrestling a boy in water and just like trying to make it fun, trying to, and he's got sensitive skin too. So he's just like, if he's got pain and it's like, oh, we gotta, if there's like a graze and there's like a little bit of a cut and there's like water on there, he's just like, it hurts and he doesn't want anything. And it's just like, it's a whole ordeal. And it's like, it's every
It,
day.
what's interesting about those gender roles is that I remember it was my principal at one of my schools,
Mhm.
and or the vice principal, and he told me, like, I told him like, oh, I'm so busy because I'm coaching basketball, and he kind of stopped me. He's like, no, it's your job to watch your daughter. That's your job. And this is in Japan. Like, this is a male teacher telling me this. Like, that's your job. And I remember him telling me that, and I was almost kind of struck, like, whoa, I thought the women were supposed to do everything. It's like, no, that's not true. Like the roles get divided even here. Now, I mean, I'm sure that there are men that are doing, dishwashing and all that kind of stuff, but like the
That's
idea that
surprising to me.
yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah,
surprising to
I
me.
know, I know. So the idea that there's some men that's coming home and sitting down and just drinking beer and watching TV while the wife prepares everything. I mean, you can do all of that, but I mean, if you take 10 minutes and take the kid into the bathroom and wash him, like you're spending time with your child and you're
Yeah.
helping everyone involved, and it's appreciated, and your wife might want to, you know, make you service you later at night because you're showing, you're showing that you care. So it's not like romantic to say, babe, I'm gonna wash the dishes now. After I wash the dishes, we're gonna go in there, we're gonna get it on. That's not how that's gonna work, but like,
Sometimes.
well, I mean, but that takes like a certain level of maturity from the woman, right? Where she's just like, oh, he's acting like a masculine man. Oh, I want that, as opposed to him saying, hey, listen, we got to be practical here. 7 o'clock to 8:30 is the busiest part of the time for our family. We got to maximize this because I got to work. You're tired. All of this stuff, and this boy is going to be at this house for another 2 or 3 years, and then we're not going to get any more of this. So maximize it, right? So, if someone understands that, hey, say, babe, there's nothing sexy or romantic about any of this, but this is family. This is how it works. And who wins? The kid.
Yeah.
The kid wins.
Yeah.
Because then he wakes up, he grows up, and he says, you know what? I'm a masculine guy. I'm going to still do what I got to do. But when my little girl needs to get washed, I'm going to do it. And so, when you have kids that are growing up and they don't have one of the parents there, they don't understand the other role. So
That's to me like that to me, and this is a bit of a tangent, but that to me I feel is the inherent damage that we have not, or America is, that's a seed that America is going to have to sow
well,
eventually,
and,
because I
and
feel.
America is not, they're not admitting the fact that a father or the second parent, or let me even go a step further, a parent of the opposite sex being in that home and letting that child grow up in that environment, that effect is being severely underrated in America, almost to a detriment of the America's future.
Well, I
Like,
mean, I think, yeah, because I feel, well, I don't know how prevalent it is to have like nannies, I guess, but uh, I feel that it's pretty, foreigners in Korea, almost, I feel almost all of them that I've encountered have nannies.
Korean nannies.
Yeah, no, not Korean. They're typically Filipino
Yeah,
or sometimes like Chinese, like kind of,
yeah,
but ultimately a lot of Filipinos. But because they want to have them speak English still, a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
times, I
Okay.
guess. But anyway, but the thing is, for me, that to me seems like a bigger issue, where kids absorb everything. and I'm curious, like, what does it do? I mean, these nannies are awesome, but it's weird that how does that affect a kid? That's something that I have no sort of firsthand
Well,
knowledge of
I
because
think I think it affects the kid when they get to the point where they start challenging authority, right? When they start saying, "Who's the authority here?" Because if the kid can, if mom says no more ice cream until after XYZ, and the nanny says no more ice cream, and that kid pitches a fit, and then the nanny says, "What am I supposed to do here?" And you call mom, she says, "Oh, I'm busy at work. Just give him ice cream." Then what does that kid learn?
hmm,
Okay, I pitch fits, I get what I want. And then when the nanny's not there, the parents are like, "Who? What is this alien child
yeah,
that I can't control? What's this?"
yeah.
As opposed to like, and that's probably one reason why it's probably better instead of having nannies to have your grandparents there, right? Or his grandparents there.
That's I mean that's more
Yeah,
that's typical of
yeah.
well that's the thing that also is changing, and I feel like that's another we didn't get to talk about this that much today, like this idea of like the larger cultural implications,
Yeah.
particularly in the U.S. about this, but I feel like that is something else that's subtly shifting
Yeah.
in Korea. This idea, this shift away from family, where it used to be families always stayed in the same home and multi generations sort of took care of one another. But now it's becoming more nuclear family.
Yeah.
Grandparents are kind of out of the picture a lot of times, and people are becoming
Well,
more
but I think
separated.
some of that has to do with the grandparents themselves, right? Like if you get used to living by yourself in your own house and people coming to your house, how do you move your grandparents into your house? Like that's
Yeah,
tough, right? So they
yeah. I
own
mean,
a house, you own a house.
it's a weird thing,
Yeah.
It's because there are a lot of different transitions happening in Korea, and I think that's one of the weird things. What is happening to old people? Because I
Yeah.
mean, frankly speaking, like what's happening to a lot of old people is they're just getting booted out
Well,
because a lot of families don't want to have to deal with them. Maybe they can't even afford to deal. They can't afford to deal with their parents, and the
well,
parents,
that's
you
part of
know,
it. And also I mean, remember now, like I mean, bless your mother, she's not here anymore, but if your mother were here, how old would she be now? 60, mid 60s, 70?
at this stage, she'd probably
About
be in her mid 70s, I think. Yeah.
so now the question I would ask you is, do you think that she would want to live in like an assistant like living facility, or would she still be driving her car around, going to the supermarket, doing everything by herself?
I think she would want to. She would want to be able to do things on her own.
So there it is, right?
Yeah.
So like the baby boomers, they grew up going to supermarkets and driving everywhere every day to work. So you take that away from them, that's a pretty big deal, right? Like if you want to get something, we're just going to call Amazon, they're going to bring it to the house, as opposed to no, 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 I can do it. I've been doing it all my life. I got this. And that applies to living in their own house and cooking their own food, and to the point where they have an accident and then something is up, right? So
But to me, I mean, weirdly, for me, I think that is also an issue in and of itself. It's like you should care about your family, Like I think the the ability the ability for people to not care, that being on the table is I think what is the most
Mike, you
corrosive
there
aspect of
there's an article on The Economist had an article. It almost made me subscribe to it. It's too expensive, so I'll wait until they have like a kind of something, whatever. But they said that the article basically suggested that in America there are growing numbers of adult children who are estranged from their adult parents. And the percentage of people that, oh, my parents are toxic, like they believe
sure.
in QAnon, whatever, so I just write them off. Which, okay, if you want to do that for your individual happiness, I get it. But that is basically drawing a fault line in your family succession. Your
Yeah,
grandkids are never going to go to the grandparents' house.
right,
Like Like your when your mom and dad die, you're going to be searching for some will somewhere, and just you know what I'm saying. Like I think there's an idea, especially in America now, where just
Well, that's
succession of
that is,
family is kind of is undervalued.
but this is another fascinating thing to me, where I don't know if it was ignorance or if this was something that I had learned, but I I never realized that giving up on your family was an option.
No,
Just
no, 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 no,
because the thing
no.
is, you know,
That
my mom and I couldn't disagree more on how to live. But for me, that was just a frustration
oh,
and
the idea
you
that
know,
you would just leave your mother and not talk to her because she was quote unquote toxic, like that's not a consideration that you'd ever consider, right?
yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, again, I didn't know it was an option, and like there were countless times, like I even contemplated suicide because of how like crazy my home situation was.
Yeah,
Especially like when I was a teenager. But it never crossed my
yeah,
mind that I would just run away,
yeah.
that I would just disappear. Like I did my version of it in terms of like moving to a different coast or finding, but like even with school, like I ended up going to school near my mom because as much as she drove me crazy, I still loved my mom. And but like I said, it's interesting because when I look at it, I don't know where that came from, how that was instilled in me, and what differentiates me from other people in this regard. Because I feel like you mentioned, this idea of estrangement, of cutting people off from their families,
Well,
think
I would
differently.
say that probably what kept you from quote unquote estranging yourself from your mother will just be in your family. That's unprecedented, isn't it not? Is it not? Like, or I mean, I guess it may have happened, but as far as growing up, like that's a
My
pretty big
family's all
step.
terrible people. That's the thing. Like the thing is, like, my family's full of terrible people. Like
Dude, dude, that's family, dude. Like
and
family is about blood, not friendship. Like,
but for yeah, but for me, it was just like I I just I just assumed I was stuck with them, and I had to figure out how to coexist, and
yeah,
I had to figure out how to navigate life
yeah,
despite this. Basically, I felt like this was what life was. It was the family to me was just like a bunch of bags of lead, and I just had to keep walking and do my stuff, figure stuff out with these bags
oh,
of lead and this growing resentment because I just assumed that everyone else's families were supporting them, helping them, and
no,
doing
that's
doing
incorrect.
nice things for them.
Well, I
And
mean,
my family was this
everyone does
tremendous
it in their
drag
own different
in my
ways,
life.
right? But this
Who knows?
and this is what I think is one of the really truly underlying problems with current American culture is if I don't like it right now, I can circle it and kick it out of my life. If it's not fitting my immediate agenda, if it's not making me happy right now, I don't want it. I don't need it. So you seem like I mean the idea. Was it Macaulay Culkin? Didn't he like divorce his parents? The idea of divorcing your parents. Hey, your parents can be toxic, but once you're old enough to leave the house, take your money, leave the house, go get a job, and do what you got to do. But the idea that you're a 13-year-old and you're going to divorce your parents, like, what are you doing? Like that?
Well,
What? So,
it's it's it's
so
weird because
imagine like
yeah,
that being like a baseline idea for a society that your parents can try and discipline you, and you can look at your parents and say, if you ever hit me again, I'm calling child protective services, and they're going to show up and blow your family up, and you can hold that threat over your parents. Like, I'm not saying that you should abuse your children, but which is better, your nuclear family or a group home? I mean, your nuclear family has to get pretty bad before a group home is better than that.
yeah.
But some kids say, well, you're not allowing me to do what I want to do, so I'm going to provoke you and blow this all up because this is what I want right now, and you're not giving it to me. And that's that's the crux of American culture. I want to do what I want to do right now,
Yeah.
and consequences be damned. And that is just a ticking time bomb, man. For
So,
families, for individuals, for society as a whole. Like,
well,
go ahead.
that's the point, though. Interestingly, to kind of come full circle, I guess maybe next week we can talk about how America is basically going to implode because we
Oh
feel
yeah,
like this pattern and this mortgaging of the future
yep.
for
For
just for
my
today,
for
right?
today's immediate gratification.
Yeah,
Yeah.
is ultimately what I think the roots have rotted out, and to the point where I don't know about you, but I sort of adamantly, or I've come to a concrete decision that I'm never going to, or at least in the immediate future, I can't
No,
imagine myself moving or living in the
no.
United States anymore.
I mean, if I were single with no child, I could imagine it. But taking my child back to America from here, no, 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 no. Like having my daughter doing live shooter drills, and it's like, Dad, why do we have to do live shooter drills today? Like, no, no, no. I'm always going to the point where I said, if if something happened and I had to go back to America, I'd just leave Monica here. I just let her stay here. I don't want her to grow up in America. I just don't. Like America doesn't have any values left. America's value is I do what I want when I want. And
Actually, America is running out of benefits in general. Like, there's just nothing good about the United States. It's such a waste. Like the
uh,
thought that I had this past week is that it is such a waste of a beautiful country.
yeah.
Americans are a waste of a beautiful country because everything that I think of that matters to me in the United States, the one thing that I thought the most tragic thing to me was I want to be able to take my kid on a road trip in the States. Like that's the thing. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
love the American
Yeah.
sort of the land itself. And to me now, I'm just like, you know what? I'm just going to buy a car here, and I'm just going to learn to love road tripping here because
Well, I would say that one of the things that makes America special is not just diversity, but acceptance of diversity.
yeah,
And you're seeing pushback against that now.
yeah.
Like just like certain people should vote and other people should not be able to vote, and we're going to make it hard for some people to vote, and certain people can vote, and it's just like, okay, well,
Well, here's
you know where this is going. We're going to have Ted Cruz as president, and he's just going to be just, I don't mean, go ahead.
so
Oh,
here here's a
DeSantos.
here's my so again I'm a dirty racist, and my racist thought for today is is I was thinking today about how basically white dudes specifically have had had dominance in a lot of areas for a long time. And I'm curious, like I haven't done any research on this, but I'm curious, like what are the areas where when when you introduced other people into those realms, have white men been able to continue their domination? And I feel
fairly,
like
fairly without
without other
unfair advantage.
support. Yeah, and I feel like it's nothing. I think I think the age of the white man is over.
Well, I mean, I,
'Cause
I would say it would have to be something subjective, like I don't know, standards of beauty or standards of handsomeness, whatever.
no way, dude. They can't hold a candle to like Ronaldo, like the you know, like a nice
Well,
tan,
but
you know.
Ronaldo's considered. I mean, he's European, right? I
He,
mean, come on.
he but he's brownish, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Like I'm talking like the old school like pale white dude, you know,
Well,
dude, you know,
well,
like
I mean, shoot, I'll be careful what I say because I'm going to post this on YouTube. But but I
but
mean,
anyway,
the history of America is handicaps. We'll put it that way.
but but it was interesting because yeah, I mean, I was thinking like in quasi seriousness, I was just thinking like when you look at athletics,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's like it's not even a contest when you look
Well,
at, and then when
athletics,
you look at
music,
CEOs,
yeah.
and I'm just like, wow, there's a lot of, it's like, wow, the heads of all these companies now are from, you know, a lot of them from India, but
Yep.
like you see like a lot of, you know, a lot of diversity. I'm not seeing a lot of young, you know,
Yeah.
impressive white dudes
Yeah. Well,
like in these situations.
and that and therein lies the ultimate quandary, right? You cannot you cannot what's the best, how should I say this? You can't become your best self without struggle or difficulty.
Yeah.
So if you want to be the best of the best, like it's hard for a rich kid to come to compete with the kid that's hungry and is sleeping on a dirt mat doing flashcards every day with hoping for the opportunity to take the test that the rich kid's going to take. Because a rich kid, even though the rich kid's sitting in the air conditioned room going over note cards, and it's not easy for the parent to say, you know, there's a kid somewhere sleeping on a glass on a dirt hut mat that's trying to take the same test that you are. And look, one of the beautiful things about capitalism is they don't care about race, they care about profit. So to get profit, they want the best person possible. And the best person possible is the person who had to work the hardest. And the person who had to work the hardest is the person that's the hungriest. And
I'm
generally
curious.
speaking, the hungriest people tend to be, you know, certain
Well,
types of people.
but the thing is, I'm curious. I'm curious to see when the backlash is going to start to, when the momentum is going to come back to family, because and concept and just sort of, again, that
Well,
the lower levels of Maslow's hierarchy of
well, I
needs.
don't think it's going to be that long, Michael. I really don't.
I
And
can't imagine it because I
like,
feel like we're close.
well, look at some, and I'll point to like a couple of individual stars in the black community, right? You know, Mary J. Blige, right?
Hmm.
Like Mary J. Blige she's 45. I think she's 50 now, and she has everything she could possibly want. Why is she still making songs about being sad and depressed and stuff? She just came out a couple of days ago talking about how depressed she is. Why is she depressed? She doesn't have any. She doesn't have a family. She has everything except a family and kids. And so you think that if you are a 19-year-old or a teenage kid looking at Mary J. Blige, you say, I want to grow up and be like her and be rich and have no family? Like this cycle can only repeat so many times where you're going to have young people that are saying, my great grandmother, she has a family. My grandmother, she has a family. My mom, my sisters, my uncles and aunts, they don't, or my aunts, they don't have family. I don't want to be like that. I want to be like great grandma. You might see a move back towards people getting married earlier and just making decisions differently, because there's going to be a very large number of people in our age group who are divorced, who never married, never had children, and they're going to be looking at their lives living in big empty houses and saying, "What is this all about?"
But what you're talking about is sort of the age old. I feel like this issue of of meaninglessness of life, particularly among the the ultra rich, or the, you know, the of the people of privilege, that's always been around. Like that's why therapists make so much money,
Who?
because
Who?
therapists. That's why therapists
Oh,
make so much money, because they, you
they
know, they're
tell people
all,
what they want to hear.
they take, yeah, they take tons of money
Yeah.
to basically, they're basically friends. They just act like, you know, bad therapists basically just
Well,
act like friends and just
but
keep
I'm
scooping
sure that
money from
this is
these people.
something that you can identify with is as a father. I Everything that you've done
I
up
need a
until
therapist.
no, just everything that you've done up until what, you're 44 now, right? 45.
45, just turned
So
45.
everything that you've done up until now, is there has there been a task that you have encountered before turning 45 that was as of equal weight to you raising a child? Like,
Wow, that's interesting. I mean,
is there
of
anything that
equal
you,
weight.
because I shouldn't say equal weight, but like something you said, like if I cannot get this done, or if I don't put everything I have into this, then I might lose a great opportunity.
I mean, the, I would amend it slightly in
Yeah.
terms of uh, taking care of family,
Oh, that's right.
because
That's right. That's right.
over the course of the past, like if you take the basically my Korea experience in total in one massive chunk, from sort of taking care of my mother in hospice, to dealing with my sister's suicide, my mother's death, and then
Oh,
having to
that all happened in Korea?
that was all Korea, man.
Oh, wow. I thought
And
some of that was in America. Oh my.
so it was, because I mean it's a clear demarcation, because the reason I came to Korea was because my mom got cancer,
Yeah.
or because she was diagnosed with cancer uh, in the States, and then she came to Korea for her treatment, and so I ended up uh, leaving. I left China to
China.
come.
That's right.
I
That's right.
left China to come to Korea to take care of her here, and
But
so
even in
yeah,
this situation, though, you're still talking about family. You're not talking about career, right?
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
So,
like,
there are a great number of people who, and I would go a step further. There are a great number of women at our age whose greatest accomplishment in life is their job. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine like the thing that you're most proud of in your life is the job that you're working, or the title that you have, as opposed to being a father? Like, I'm
but
sure that the title matters, but when you have
it's
another child walking around with your last name, go ahead.
it's interesting, because I feel bad like talking about this now, because this is another topic that I would love to dive into. Is that it's hard for me to say, it's hard for me to compare it to anything else,
Yeah.
because you know, as far as work goes, to me, in my mind, the work that I all my work is in service of my family. Like, because I'm not in a position where my work, I feel, I've never looked at my work as something that would hold on its own, or was an achievement,
Yeah.
or a means of its own.
Yeah.
Like, to me, it was always the vehicle for
Yep. But
either
but
my own
but
life or my
that's what it's
family's life.
supposed to be for. That's why the family works.
Well, it doesn't have to be. Well, right, because in my mind, like, for me, my priority, I think, for most of my life has either been uh, has basically been people, whether it be like myself, my family, or like the people, the community, like around me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I've never really been someone that was driven by accomplishment, or driven by
Yeah.
accolades, or driven by by things. So it's hard for me to say, because I'm sure there are people, and we talked about this, where I've encountered people that are motivated by those things, and
Yeah.
maybe they're wired in a way where if they do really well at a job, it's just as good, or just as profound, or just as
Well,
satisfying to them.
but the one reason I'll push it back against that is because you might be really good at the job, but you're doing the job for some end, right? So it's either for money, or you want to accomplish something, you want a title or something. But even if you accomplish that end goal, why? You want to transfer that wealth to someone, you want to build a life that you can be proud of, because at the end of the day, whatever you're doing, however much money you're trying to accumulate, you're doing it for someone besides yourself. Like, you might want to impress your parents, you might want to attract a certain type of woman, you might want a certain lifestyle that someone might want to be a part of, you might want to send your kids to certain level of schooling, something. Like there's some outside motive that has you working 18-hour days besides I'm doing it because it's my life goal. Because you wouldn't do that. Like I don't think you can do that. You can't do 18-hour days 6 days a week for 5 years and say you're doing it because I want to get to a certain place in my career. You want to get to that place in your career because you want something. And that's something that's got to have something to do outside of that career. That's what my point is. You might want to just have sex with a lot of women, whatever it is. But
again, I don't know. It's hard. Like, I understand what you're saying, but to me, it's hard for me to say definitively because I know that people are wired differently, and it's possible. Because, like, as much as I'd love to think that there's a universal thread for all people, like a goal or some sort of substantive thing that everyone seeks that will give them satisfaction, I just I don't have evidence of that because I don't have confidence in that because I feel that I've encountered those that are just wired differently. Even though it seems over time that they do come around to
whoa,
that they do come around to the family thing. In the end, like I'm not sure. I don't know.
well,
Like,
and I'll reply by saying, and this is one of the reasons why the book I'm reading is so fascinating, is that one of the things Robert Greene talks about in his book is that as human beings, our imperatives for living the lives that we live haven't really changed that much since hundreds of thousands of years ago. Like our innate, I don't know, proclivities, our innate desires, or we want to procreate, we want to be social beings who belong to a group, we want to live a life that has meaning, we want our children to start at a certain position that's ahead of the position that we started at. Just simple things that have always been there as a part of human nature. So the idea that humans have changed drastically in the last 2 or 3 generations, maybe in terms of what we've been told, what we should want and what we should do, but the bottom line, like motivators for human life still remain procreation, raising healthy offspring, giving them a good start in life, living your life as fulfilled as you possibly can, trying to find happiness. Like some of those, most of that is something that's been the case for hundreds of thousands of years for adults, for humans.
But I think it has changed. This is something that we've talked about before. I think it has changed, and I think it's changed in the past maybe like 2 or 3 generations. I think it's changed because, and I'll give you the same reason we talked and the reason I'll give you as before is I think up until 2, 3 generations ago, people had to think about the future. People had to, because that was there was this idea of there was merit in the future, and there was merit because you could not accomplish enough in one lifetime to really make any difference. You would always that was the motivator. It's like, okay, well, next generation, I'm going to make things better. Like this notion that you just mentioned about, I want things to be better for my kids than they are for me. That is a logical rationalization for someone who can't do anything in their own life. They're just like, well, I'm gonna, since I can't make anything happen for me, might as well just try to do what I can for the next generation, right? And the same thing when we talk about science, rockets, and people, this pursuit of science. It's like, okay, we want to make sure that generations hence have a better life than we do right now. Yeah. But since the 80s, since the explosions of wealth,
you make a good point.
And since the focus of money itself and the ability to accumulate wealth as individuals, people don't have to care about the future. They're like, you know what? Today, let's get all the hookers and drugs we can get.
Oh, or go a step further than that.
Who cares about religion?
Who cares about religion? Why can't me and all of my classmates be TikTokers and YouTubers?
Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
it. Let's let's
yep.
let's just enjoy all of the sort of material,
Immediate,
fascinations
yep.
and all these things that uh, all the candy of life. Let's experience it all, and we've got 20 to whatever 70 years to
Well,
enjoy it, and let's
but
do it.
I would say that with
We
each
don't need
iteration,
families. We don't
well,
need kids.
with
Birth
each
rates
iteration,
historically low in every
yeah.
every country just about,
But I,
except
I
for
will say that humanity has been resilient, and there have been iterations of the human family, the human being that maybe we're not directly privy to because we weren't alive when they started printing books or when people started riding horses and telling grandiose stories about what happened hundreds of miles away. But I'm sure that humans have gone through this cycle before. Not maybe not the same way, but there's going to be a point where people have to realize if we're going to sustain human like the human being, we're going to have to make some decisions about how we live our lives, right?
it's three things, man. It's three things. The number one thing is the planet coming apart, global warming, like all this plastic waste, all the actual stuff that we've been ignoring, like the
Yeah.
poisonous water, the fire, the climate changing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the number one thing. So once we break the planet, and once people start acknowledging that we're breaking the planet,
Yeah.
that's going to be the number one thing, right? Number two, as far as the United States goes,
Oh.
is just like when the U.S. recognizes that there is no moral center, nobody cares about the United States anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Everything and everything of value in the United States is basically either from corporations that don't care about the U.S. government, or basically like Chinese and Russian billionaires that have bought all the real estate. you know, it's not going to matter. The United States is not going to matter. No one's going to care about
Mm-hmm.
American culture. No one's going to care about being in America, and they'll
Mm-hmm.
own anything of substance anyway. You know, and the only thing that America has to combat that is a bunch of outdated military equipment and a bunch of TikTokers,
Yeah.
and athletes, entertainers, a lot of second-rate entertainers and things like that. And
OnlyFans,
so,
OnlyFans girls.
right, it's just going to be America's going to be one of the top prostitute whatever
Oh
porn
yeah, yeah.
porn porn capital of the world, which will be great. That's a great reputation and notable, a fitting sort of epilogue for the United States at present. Um, but yeah, there's going to be that sort of major reckoning in terms
Yeah.
of just like suddenly like hopefully there's going to be a backlash to this, but I suspect that there is going to be sort of this moral reckoning where it's just like, okay, well, who do we follow? Are we going to follow the Chinese culturally? That sucks. America's kind of dropped the ball culturally as being sort of a cultural leader. Who else is there? I mean, France. I don't know. France, Canada,
Well,
New
but
Zealand.
then
Who knows?
this is something I think the West in general is going to have to come to a reckoning on, and this is probably one of the things that's going to really probably challenge the Western leaning Asian cultures like Japan and
Mm.
Singapore and I guess Taiwan to an extent is we have watched these Western ideals come full circle and now you have you know elementary school kids making decisions about their gender and you have you know children going to school in college to figure out how they can maximize their OnlyFans career and everyone's TikToking and where do we go from here? Like you're gonna have a useless generation of people that can't do anything, and what do you tell
Well,
them?
well, it depends, because the third reckoning I feel like we have is this technological reckoning, because I think we're getting disconnected from our ability to be able to affect our worlds. Like we have this giant buffer between
Yeah,
like
what?
between ourselves
Yeah,
and our lives, which
yeah,
is, like you said, the technology. And so the one way that the first reckoning doesn't happen is because no one cares, because they're, they have an idyllic screen on their faces.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to care if the world burns, because they can just put a simulated, helmet on and not acknowledge what's happening in the world. And so with realistic graphics, with and augmented reality, like it could be just as good. It doesn't really matter having a real tree, because we can just live in a toxic wasteland if we have a helmet that can show us whatever we want to see. So that's the idea, is that, like, if I and this is just maybe my own personal fear, but like I get increasingly anxious about a society where hackers are getting more and more power, like people who are able to program and have more and more power. It's like, because like it used to be, hackers were just like this mysterious group in the corner, and they were stealing, they were stealing stuff, but now everything's connected to computers, and now like they have an inordinate, like people have an inordinate amount of power. Like they, you've got these, like, I guess, like, this is another weird tangent, but like basically I heard I heard an article.
Oh, you're talking about the pipeline, right? The ransom, or maybe you're talking to someone else.
No. But well, it's related. It's related, but basically, on the dark web, they have instruction books for how to hold a company hostage, and they have lists of what kind of companies or entities are the most vulnerable. And so people with no programming experience can find like these cookbooks for how to take down all these institutions and it's as simple as like executable files. It's like, hey, just do this, click this, and then it'll happen automatically. And so they're kind of like, so basically all these knuckleheads we're just kind of creating a bunch of knuckleheads that can just break down all of our institutions. And the reason, and that's frightening to me. It's frightening to me that there isn't more attention. Maybe there's attention being paid, behind the scenes that I'm not aware of. I hope that's the case. But everything I've seen about the U.S. government leads me to believe that.
The scary part about the American government is that they can't agree on anything. So even if you have half the government that says, "Hey, we got to do something about these hackers," you'll have the other half just say, "Why should we? You guys are overreacting." And
Well, I mean, that's what I think is interesting. I guess like this is something that I heard on Bill Maher this past week, where this concept that the United States, what is it? The United States is fighting a war from 2 generations ago. Like basically all this money that's being spent on jets and tanks and
absolutely.
It's like basically,
absolutely.
China and Russia have abandoned that war. And they're just like, you know what?
Well,
the new war is basically.
How about the new war is basically infrastructure. We can move our products and stuff and our products and our people around at lightning speed, and they know it and we know it. And when we want people to be in X place in 16 hours to do something such, we can do that. How about you guys? And America is still trying to build F-25s, are they? That don't work, and they
never use.
Yeah, and even if you do use them, if a hacker can take 25 minutes and break the computing system, it's useless. You can't use it. So,
and the other interesting sort of wrinkle to that is there's so much sort of incest, because you had, I think it was Boeing that worked with the Korean military to create a plane that was basically identical to this top secret plane that they developed for the U.S. military. And it's just like, wait, this is the identical plane. And then like in China, they developed a clone plane of this amazing plane.
Mean, how could you have a Defense Department contract where they're building components in China? Like it shouldn't. That shouldn't even be possible. Like,
and it's just like,
what do you think is going to happen? They're going to reverse engineer all of that.
Right. That's what is so silly. It's just like, wait a second, you guys, what are you even talking about? Like, again, this is a situation where companies sort of operate on top of the governments, and they're just like, look, we don't care about the U.S. government. We're just trying to make money. You know, there's no
Oh,
loyalties there.
we're
None of
trying to
those
make
things.
we're trying to make as much short term profit as we can to keep the shareholders happy,
And again,
and the short
that's
term
this,
profit is at the expense of long term profit.
and that's the number two thing. Again, this sort of the moral, this moral reckoning, where it's just like, hey, when we start because and we're kind of chipping at it with China, where they're just like, hey man, like China's going to be in charge of the world soon,
Yeah.
and
Or
they are
was it
they're
Google had the thing where they were censoring what was it they were censoring something about the I forgot the name of the people that are being persecuted.
the Uyghurs. Yeah,
Something about that, either that or the region they're in or something, and they were self policing themselves so that the government would get upset about it. And it's like, what can America do about it? Like,
I think something like that. I can't remember, but basically, like, all the corporations have used kid gloves with China because they want in with that
they want the
market.
market.
And soon India is going to be the same, and basically, but in the meantime, right now China is basically like, hey, we're gonna take Taiwan. We've taken Hong Kong. We just shut down the last newspaper in Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, hey, Hong Kong, so much for democracy. Nobody cares. Nobody.
Oh yeah,
that,
that's
that
right.
just
They
that just happened. That
Well,
just happened.
and you're looking at America. America is moving away from democracy itself. From democracy itself.
Right,
I mean,
exactly. And
so
so, I mean, it's weird. And again, maybe this is just news that I have not heard of. It's possible that things are happening behind the scenes. But to me, it's just like, look, they have, they have a history of religious persecution. They have these concentration camps. These are true. This is true. Sort of an ethnic, excuse me, sort of isolation situation there, and re-education. And they have a track record of imposing, the standard, the communist doctrine on the population.
mm-hmm.
You've got what's happening what's happening with Hong Kong, or what happened. Sorry, it's not even happening anymore.
Happened,
It's done. It's
happened,
over.
done,
Hong Kong is part of
done.
China now.
Part of China.
Taiwan's the next
Yeah,
domino, and it seems like they're literally and figuratively on an island because
yeah. Because there's no
there's
one.
they're talking to people. They're just like, hey man, we're doing our military stuff. We're getting ready for war. And there's crickets. There's crickets from the global community. It's
Mm-hmm.
just like, sorry, Taiwan. All right, well, all right,
Well,
you're not a country anymore.
we need our cheap goods.
Everyone's gonna pull a John Cena, and then Taiwan is just gonna be gone. It's gonna be China. It's gonna be
Yeah,
the Taiwan province, and it's
and
and who's gonna stop them?
well,
Who's gonna stop China?
it's not going to stop with Taiwan either, and that
No.
I worry about that. Yeah.
And that's where I feel like, I mean, that's the thing. We've got these three sort of cataclysms. I guess these three cataclysms on the horizon. I feel like maybe the second one's the worst one, maybe, because if we had the second one down, then we could actually try to fix the other two, right? But if we have no vision and we have no moral sort of
Yeah.
imperative to do something for the world, to
Yeah.
sacrifice for the world,
Yeah, and
then
there's no imperative for that in America. Like
yeah,
the idea that 20-year-old kids are going to sacrifice their access to social media and whatever, OnlyFans, whatever, for something greater than their immediate gratification. I can't see that happening. I can't see
well,
it.
it's weird because
And
I'm
not to
I'm
mention that
surprised.
a lot of them are fat anyways. So go ahead.
What, I don't know. Like, it's weird because I don't know. The funniest thing for me is when I scroll through, what is it, the YouTube Shorts, and I find that one of the things that I get often. I don't know if these are particularly popular, or if these are just
Mhm.
algorithmically sent to me, but it's just like these regular, teenage kids talking about facts, giving lists of facts, and they're just like, Did you know that, you know, this much plastic garbage is in the thing? And it's like all these shocking facts. And I feel like that's the extent of what America's contribution to all these issues will be. It'll just be like, you know what, this got a lot of views,
Yeah.
and then the end. You know, the end,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what's going to wake America up, but it might just be inflation. It might just be a change in the standard of living. It might just be that. Like, it might be America's standard of living changes so much that what kids are used to is so expensive. Having your own place, having your own cell phone, your own internet, like being able to live remotely close to the way they grew up. If that changes considerably, and you start telling people to make sacrifices, like it's going to cause something. Like they're going to say you got to be mad at somebody because you used to have cheap internet, now you don't have cheap internet and cheap gas and affordable food. So what are we going to do about it? And I mean, I guess they could point at Democrats or Republicans, but that still won't solve the problem. So it's going to have to be somebody else, right? So I mean, I imagine that's might be in the cards sometime in the near future because, like, if you ask Americans to sacrifice their standard of living, that's going to be a problem. As a matter of fact, hell, look, American standard of living right now is not as high as it was when we were in high school. They just have TikTok and YouTube, and that's enough, right? Like,
Well, yeah, I mean, basically, like the interesting thing, I feel like there is a new opiate of the masses
mm-hmm,
because
it's not religion anymore. That's right.
ultimately technology technology became so cheap. The cameras, phone
Mm-hmm.
screens, cameras, and software have
And
gotten so cheap.
and
Have gotten so, that
connectivity. Yeah.
yeah, because you know because of that, I feel that yeah, like you said, it's a distraction. It's like it's I feel like it's even more insidious than drugs in a lot of cases, where it's like people can divert themselves and get away from food,
Mm-hmm.
from from family, from other whatever other things that nourish you. You can just you can sort of replace a lot of that with with that technology, and I think
Oh yeah,
that
that's dangerous.
yeah, and I feel like that's the
Or even
part
even
that's
even
so
dating and finding your actual mate. Like the idea that you're using the internet and applications to find the person that you're going to consider as your significant other, like that. I mean, that has never happened in the history of the world where you're looking all around the world for that one person that's compatible to you as opposed to your immediate surroundings, right?
well. I mean, I'm wondering what the we. I feel like we still haven't hit the equilibrium with it yet, because like, and again, I don't know as far as relationships go, but like, aren't there like tons of different like, aren't there tons of different sort of relationship like there we're still in the stage of superabundance.
Mm-hmm.
Like things haven't really settled into all these different haven't really settled in yet, because people are still carving out these different audiences where you have like the the MAGA dating app, and you have
Well,
the you know
but but the,
religious dating apps, and you
but
have
the
all these different groups that are able to kind of
but the reason why
be
I
with
don't
each
think that
other.
the apps matter so much is because I mean, is except for maybe the super Christian apps, they're all leading to the same place, like immediate hookup culture. So what difference does it make? Like all of these people, so a lot of these people are on multiple apps, right? So if the end goal still remains immediate gratification, is that's not going to go anywhere. That's not going to
Sure.
go anywhere until there's a cataclysmic change in American society where people have to reassess like their daily values and pursuits, right? Until that happens, they're just going to change apps. They're going to stop using Instagram, use TikTok. They're going to stop using TikTok and use whatever is next, and get that immediate fix that they're looking for until there's no way to avoid the bigger problem that the immediate fix doesn't fix. So I would say that until there's like some kind of like ground shaking something, and to be honest with you, Mike, that might come a lot sooner than we might think it might. I mean, it could be.
For sure.
I mean, it could be. I mean, you see the building collapsing. I'm not saying there's going to be something like that, but it might be something that's undeniable. That it could be something physical. It might be the economy taking a turn. It could be political violence. It might just be something that you can't just say, oh, well, I'm just going to go back to TikTok or whatever and just pretend like it's not there, because there are going to be such a great number of people affected by this cataclysmic thing that you're going to have segments of society saying, we got to rethink some of this stuff. I mean, I don't know if that's that far away, to be honest with you.
I mean, honestly, like, to me, I feel like what you're talking about, I feel like we're already past it. Like, basically, like I told you, for me, the most depressing part of the pandemic was,
good point. You made this point before. That's right.
Yeah, I feel the most depressing part
of the chance to
There's a chance for the world, especially even the country, to unite behind a common sort of tragedy. And because it was coupled because it became politicized and it got coupled with commerce, suddenly we got this message pushed where it's like, okay, well, the only thing that matters is money. We don't care about lives lost. We don't care about being smart and taking care of each other.
Get back to work and stop.
We don't care about and even like we don't care about grandma. We don't care about grandpa. We just want spring break. We want bars. We want to go to bars again. And America's priorities clearly got communicated. We want NBA basketball. We want NFL basketball. We want movies.
We don't want to be inconvenienced with wearing masks.
Yeah. We don't care about people dying. We only care about ourselves dying.
Well, we care about what we want right now.
Yeah.
We want what we want right now.
And so to me, it was sort of like the perfect storm of the crappiest president with the crappiest movement with a global pandemic. So the momentum of all this division and divisiveness with crazy incompetence plus negative messaging,
no solutions,
right? And plus just overall like corruption and incompetence, and with this real plague that struck,
that's still not over.
That's still not over. And we're in the hangover of it. We're still in the hangover of the pandemic. We're in the hangover of all the incompetence in the United States government. And weirdly, you have this stubborn group of Republicans that are still pushing like this nonsense, despite the fact that January 6th happened. You still have like this whole thing, and you're just like, and to me, again, that's the nail in the coffin for me. I'm just like,
well,
you know what?
And like one of the things that we can see is we can see it from the outside in, where we're like, you guys are still fighting over masks, really? Like, American kids aren't back in school yet, really? Like, they're a year behind. They're a year behind Asia. And they were already behind Asia. Like, what? Like, what? They're not going to catch up. They can't. They won't ever. The whole generation of American kids will never catch up to Asian kids in math, science, hell, maybe English. Like, seriously, like, what are y'all doing? Like, yeah.
But there's going to be a lot of cool TikTokers. A lot of kids, they'll have a lot of time to make TikTok
Well, the key,
shorts.
and this is one of the things that they don't teach these kids here. I want to be a YouTuber. They don't understand that. Oh, they can change the what do you call it, terms of usage anytime they want.
Right.
So you are an established YouTuber or whatever, and they say, oh yeah, you have to have these criteria, and you don't, you go from 10,000 a month to 4.
Yeah.
And hey, OnlyFans just did that. They just made a announcement to move to more mainstream content. So they're putting some new restrictions on their content creators, and that's gonna cost some of those people money. Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, it's interesting to see. I mean, that that whole side development as well, because you see the war happening with Apple, Facebook, Epic Games, where it's like, look, we used to just be screwing people, but now we're screwing each other, right? And it's like, hey, Apple, you're not taking a 30% of my cut, right? Anymore. I want to screw the people. I
Oh
want to be able
yeah,
to screw the people
yeah. But
fully. I don't want you to be. I don't want to have you having a taste of my cut.
yeah.
And
It
then
just
Facebook's the
they
same
back
way.
it. Yeah, back in the
Yeah,
old days, you could embed video, YouTube videos in Facebook, and all of a sudden now you're going to a browser to do it.
right.
Like, yeah, just
And
yeah.
it's like same thing with TikTok and YouTube. They're just like, hey, you can't put TikTok stuff on our
And
platform.
of course, the American government is not nearly as as powerful as Apple, Microsoft, Google.
Yeah,
Not at all.
yeah.
All they can do is bow down to. Could you guys please not overthrow the government?
Right.
Could you
Can you
please
guys?
not let the
Yeah,
government get overthrown on your platform?
please. Yeah, and again, and Facebook's like, maybe it's like we don't like sorry so as far as Facebook goes, it's like it doesn't really matter, so you see
Facebook, who
this
owns they own what you call it, they own
what,
what was it,
Instagram.
Instagram. Yeah. So the only though I guess one of the things that it actually fight that actually challenges them is that these apps, they get popular and they go out of popularity pretty damn quick, pretty darn quick. So I guess they have a move for 3 or 4 moves ahead.
Well, I mean, the thing is, it's like, again, you've got the only competition that a lot of these places have is China,
Mm-hmm.
because because
China's the only
right
one
now
regulating them, right?
China has they've blocked everyone else out so that they could have their homegrown systems
Mm-hmm.
that have access to their tremendous audience. Like China knows what they're kind of doing in terms
Yes.
of maintaining a
Yes, they do.
certain identity for themselves.
Yes, they do. And
And
everyone's greedy because they want that market. And
that's
China
the
says,
thing.
"We know you do. We know you want this market."
That's why, again, you look at India, you can see there's a clear contrast between China and India. Look at how COVID destroyed India, and look at what happened with COVID in China, and you can see the clear difference between the two.
Oh yeah,
It's like, even though India has the same sort of maybe exploitative labor practices that China has,
well,
the
China
government,
has China
you know,
has organization, and
yeah, the
they have
Chinese,
government control. So
yeah,
you're going to take the vaccine, damn it.
yeah. China, because the thing is, China doesn't care about ideology at all. China's just like, China is pretty much. I feel like when you make the sort of the comparison with like an ant colony, it's about as industrious and sort of pragmatic as it gets,
Yeah.
you know, and so yeah, it's pretty scary, man. It's pretty scary in that regard. But for me, I
Well,
think as long as
what the world needs is a counterbalance to China, and is there
it
one?
it would have been nice, because the thing is, you've got and again, I don't know what the roots of it are, but I don't know how right wing, hyper conservative,
They don't have an answer for it.
I don't know how that I don't know how that wrecked the West, whether it be the UK and
Oh,
France too.
I
France
know
and
how it wrecked the West. Is simple. They are afraid of losing their voting control over an ethically from its origin an ethically white Christian state. Like that is what this is all about. Like this, all of this preventing people from voting. This is all about fear that Anglo-Saxon American white Anglo-Saxon American Protestants are going to lose political control over America. There were people who thought that when Donald Trump got elected, that when they came out with the projection that America was going to be majority minority rule by was it 2038, 2040ish or something like that that study struck fear in a lot of people's hearts, and they said we're voting for Trump because he's the guy who can save us from this.
but
And
that's the thing.
yeah,
But that was the thing. So that explains the United States. But what about the rise of fascism and right wing extremism? Like what where did Brexit come from? Where did I guess like what are all the, there like I think there are a lot of this there's been a recent rise
yeah,
of right wing fascism. Um, I don't know what the timeline is specifically, but there was inklings of this happening all over Europe for a long time, and then it. I thought it was a culmination in Brexit, but actually, Brexit was the preamble to what happened in the United States,
well
and to see it
it
sort of.
seemed if you ask me, I would say that it's almost a kind of like a way to reclaim the past, right? Where the world was dominated by the quote unquote right countries, and if we act in a certain way, we can reclaim our place as it was. But of course, the world is considerably more complex than that now. So
Mm,
it's not. I mean, just even the G7, right? You watch the G7, and you're thinking, like, you have Canada there, but not China. Like
mm.
what is the point of this? Like, like, do you think that China even cares that they're not invited? Like, everyone needs China. Everyone needs Brazil. Everyone needs India. Like, you can't pretend that China or Canada and who else is China is Canada, uh, England, America, Japan, Italy. Is Italy there?
I think Italy was there too. Yeah.
Italy, France, Spain. Is that it? Like that. That's not going to make anybody quiver in their boots. Like so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, think about what you want to talk about next week, because I could go on this. I mean, oh Lord, have mercy, man. Lord, Lord,
U.S.,
Lord.
Canada, UK, France, Italy, Germany, Japan. That's the G7.
Yeah, I mean, Italy, really? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, Italy just went through that really bad like coronavirus response, and you almost, yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, if without the critical eye, it just looks like, oh, this old world order, we're gonna keep it together, and I mean, if you're China, would you not consider creating a new G7, and just invite like Brazil and Iran and like countries that are strategic, that have like resources that are really important to the global order? Like, I mean, I would imagine that they won't do it until they're in a position where they can start saying, you know what, we're going to start thumbing our nose out at you guys now. We're going to have the alternative G7 now. Australia's not in the G7.
Apparently not.
Oh, that's
Apparently
surprising.
not.
Yeah.
But I mean, Australia is pretty small
Yeah.
country.
Yeah. No
You
kidding.
know, I mean not
Probably.
geographically, but you know, as
What,
far as
I
population.
think it's like what 30 million. It's not that many. Yeah.
Not
Well,
a whole
let
lot.
like I would say lucky for our kids. Our kids are going to have at least have an opportunity because they're growing up in the Asia. So our kids are actually growing up to compete with Chinese kids, but kids in America,
20, 25.8 million in Australia.
yeah, that's really small.
That's, I mean,
That's like that's like one person for like every five rats. I shouldn't make fun of that because that story scares the hell out of me, man. The idea that they have so many rats that people are
they
getting
can't
bit
kill
while
them fast enough.
they're
Yeah,
sleeping and they're getting bit by rats and they can smell them in the walls. Like, oh my God,
yeah.
I cannot imagine. Oh God, can you imagine your house being overrun with rats? Oh dear God, they can smell them in the walls. Ugh. And I thought they had it bad with the flying spiders and ugh, God, that is just a nightmare. Oh my goodness. What are you looking up? You're looking up something, huh?
Oh, I was looking at the population of Canada is 38 million.
So Canada's bigger than, and
Slightly.
that's like the, I mean, what the prop? I mean, gosh, I mean, how many cities are in China that are bigger than 220 million? I mean, they have aren't there like five or six cities that have more than 20 million people?
I think at least. I think like all the major cities in China have more than like.
I try and tell people, I try and tell people like if you really want to understand like how powerful the industrial might is of China, just go to Alibaba and just put in a bid for something that you want to buy and see how many producers start sending you text messages. It just is totally humbling that you can go and find some toy that's at Walmart and just go Google that toy and you'll have 15 suppliers sending you individual email messages saying, we'll make this for you at this price. We'll make this for this price. How many do you want? Is there anything else we could do for you? And you're like, holy shit. There is really? It's just it's humbling. So yeah. That's one reason why I don't really use Alibaba anymore because how can you sell anything on Amazon if it's that readily available by 20 different suppliers? Like you're talking about making a profit with like pennies on in mass volume. Like, just good luck with that. So,
That's pretty nuts.
yeah,
I don't know. It's depressing, man. This whole topic is depressing.
I wouldn't say it's depressing. I would say that one of the things that is good for us is that we're aware of this, and we understand that America as it exists cannot continue to exist without major like reconsideration of our social pillars and sacrifice. And we can see that. So
Well,
we're lucky because we can avoid the pain, but for a lot of Americans, the pain is on the way. It just started.
the problem right now, as sort of like my final note, I guess, and I've experienced this because I'm also right now like looking to buy a car, is from my research, basically America is just seen as a big consumer. So
Yep.
basically,
Mm-hmm.
America's a big consumer, China's a big consumer. Like those are like and
Mm-hmm.
so that's really all it is. You know,
Mm-hmm.
they are, and when you look at we've had this conversation. When you look at the sort of the map, the commerce map, it's like, what's the trade,
Mm-hmm.
you know, how much trade, what's going in, what's coming out. Like basically, you know, America's sucking in tons of products.
Oh, America is cutting down trees and refining oil and shipping it to China, and China's turning it into toys and clothing, and they're shipping it back. That's it.
All right.
And yeah, yeah, well, yeah. Well, shoot me some ideas about what you want to talk about next week.
Oh, I will. I guess
Don't get too depressed because
it's all right. I'm staying. Like I said,
human nature has a way of balancing itself out, and who knows, there might be some political unrest in China or some unforeseen circumstances. But I might consider learning Chinese. Might thinking
well,
about it.
my thing is. So my thing is, I'm hoping. So the one. Okay. So I'll end on this. I'll end my comments on a bit of a positive note. Is that I am hoping. I feel like the ground is fertile for a rise in morality. Like I think people are going to start caring about. I feel like because we're living in a dearth of it right now, I think the natural reaction will be for more sort of mature, hopefully more thoughtfulness, more empathy, more and hopefully and not the overcorrected woke, that whole nonsense, canceling and
Oh,
all that.
just the way that society works. It Society works with two people
Just
cooperating to raise
yeah,
children
just
and
calmer,
and
saner
yeah,
minds.
yeah,
I think,
yeah.
and honestly, I feel like this might sound weird. I was actually thinking about this today. Also, is I'm hoping that there is a revival in religion, and I would love for there to be a a new religion, you know, that kind of comes in, whether it be like a huge wave of Buddhism, just
Yeah.
like people
I could actually
discovering
see that. I could actually
something
see
like
a wave of an Eastern religion where
yeah,
something
like
that doesn't require, because like Christianity, I think a lot of people have kind of seen Christianity kind of go its course where we do whatever we want. We invade a place and kill a bunch of people, throw up some crosses, say we're sorry, convert the rest of the people and say worship this guy, as
because I
opposed to
think
like Buddhism is. I mean, hell, think about all the people in America that are doing yoga. Imagine if all the yoga doers said, you know what, I want to incorporate more of this into my life, right?
yeah, I mean I think part of it there's some of that happening, and especially like if it's top down or it's a bunch of rich, vapid, housewives or whatever
Yeah,
people, they start adopting it and then they throw it out to their followers
yeah.
and maybe some
Well,
profundity will
one thing that's
trickle
going to have
down.
to happen in America is that this addiction to consumerism and immediate gratification, I that can't last much longer. It
Well, we'll see
can't.
what happens, but we're in that sort of forget the future
Yeah.
sort of age, and I think what we're seeing in the United States at least, and I guess some places in Europe, is you've got these young people that are kind of they're coming up and they're seeing
Mm-hmm. Like
you know the
where this going
ledger,
to be
like
for us with our
all the
kids?
yeah,
Yeah.
all the shelves are being emptied out and all this stuff, and they're saying like, hey man, what's going to be here for us when we come around.
They're
You're
like when we were kids, there was a Toys R Us, and now it's gone.
Yeah, like
There
all the
used to
shelves are
be
empty.
like,
We've got all the plastic garbage.
yeah,
Where are the products? Where are the
yeah.
things that we're going to use? Like,
Oh,
wait, we've got.
where are the jobs where we make stuff and we can be proud of it? Where are those jobs at? Like we don't want to be money shifters and yeah, yeah,
Like, anyway,
yeah.
so hopefully, well, I'm hoping that's what I'm hoping for. Buddhism.
I don't disagree with. It's funny about that, and I'll say this and I'll end with this is that my father, lifelong Christian Buddhist, Christian part time Islam guy, right? He is super into Hinduism right now.
Really?
My dad is doing 30 minutes of yoga every morning. Like he said like after so many years of just the Western religions, like the idea that you're not committing to being a better person on a daily basis, like it just doesn't sit with him. Like
Yeah.
that this whole idea that you just say, "Oh, God forgive me of my sins, I go to heaven." Like
Yeah.
that idea just creates some of the worst people imaginable. Like just be an
Well,
asshole, and then right before you die, oh, you know what? God forgive me.
also, actually, I think what I'll do this week, I'm working on, I'm still working on my reimagined Ten Commandments.
Okay.
I think I'm almost done with my first two sections. I've
All
had
right.
to rewrite them a couple of times. I came up with something interesting this week that I'm trying to sort of work out. But it was kind of an interesting sort of discovery, and I want to toss it your way,
Okay.
kind of see what your thoughts
Throw it
are,
at
and
me.
then maybe you can pass it along. But yeah, I'm kind of interested to see your take on my take on the first two commandments, because kind of like I was kind of happy with like this observation, and we'll see.
I look forward to hearing it.
Anyway, I'll catch you on the next one, man.
Oh yeah, yeah. See you next week, Mike.
Later.